Gone. President Bush today called it, quote, a national tragedy, and the president vowed to, quote, hunt down and punish those responsible for the attacks. And there are already indications of who, or at least some of the who may have been behind them. More on that, we turn to Jim Stewart in Washington. Jim?
Dan, it didn't take long, and it's unclear whether it will lead to anything, but federal investigators are on the move tonight, serving search warrants and questioning potential accomplices to these attacks. Sources say the first concrete tips were picked up from a study of the flight manifest aboard the doomed aircraft. At least one search, we're being told, is in the Miami area. Meanwhile, intelligence officials say they have now picked up what one official calls significant indicators that the suicide planes were hijacked by members of Al-Qaeda, the terrorist group that reports to Osama bin Laden. Sources describe the intelligence as communications intercepts and said they're not definitive, but they are persuasive.
Sensing that bin Laden would quickly become a suspect, Afghanistan's ruling Taliban party, which has been giving him safe refuge, called a press conference. We do not allow Osama bin Laden to operate from our land, the Taliban said, warning the U.S. not to take any, quote, speedy actions to retaliate. Slowly, FBI evidence teams are starting to piece together what happened on the aircraft and zeroing in on how the terrorists pulled off the hijackings. Attorney General John Ashcroft provided one insight when he said that the hijackers of one of the aircraft had apparently sneaked knives through airport security.
American Airlines Flight 11 departed Boston for Los Angeles, hijacked by suspects armed with knives. This plane crashed into the World Trade Center.
Within minutes of today's attacks, officials were pointing to the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center by a group with ties to bin Laden, citing it as proof that bin Laden has never given up on his dream to destroy the symbol of America's economic power. And in recent months, analysts say bin Laden has only become more and more sophisticated in his attempts to strike at the United States. They point specifically to his simultaneous attack on 2 U.S. embassies in East Africa.
They also went directly against a U.S. destroyer, which was heavily guarded, and they did put a hole in that ship, the USS Cole. So they have a track record of conducting attacks that one would think they might not be capable of.
Late today, the U.S. intelligence community was rapidly sorting through a priority list of potential suspects within the U.S. for electronic eavesdropping, with sources saying the number may reach into the hundreds.
Some of the very doomed passengers themselves may have provided authorities with their first valuable tips. In panic desperation, some of the passengers, including, we're told, the wife of U.S. Solicitor General Ted Olson, called from a cell phone to say their plane had been hijacked. Another passenger called from the restroom at the rear of another aircraft. One passenger, it has been suggested, provided detailed information about one of the hijackers. The working theory by lawmen so far is that the hijackers were pilots themselves and forcefully took over the controls to dive their jets straight into the targets. Dan?
Jim Stewart, live in our Washington Bureau. Join us now again for perspective and context on this. Former U.S. National Security Advisor Sandy Berger, who was in fact the National Security Advisor for 8 years straight through. Sandy Berger, question. There was a time, my recollection, in the 1980s, possibly the late 1970s, when the United States put aboard aircraft skyjack protection specialists in civilian clothes. Now that was ended. Was any thought given while you were the National Security Advisor to reinstituting that for protection aboard airliners?
Not as far as I know. We had, as you remember, Dan, a spate of hijackings during the 70s and 80s. The United States intensified its airport security and essentially has had a grip on that problem for the past 10 years. We've had very little of this activity.
Past tense now.
And one of the things that is so staggering about today is that in 4 separate instances, people were able to get aboard planes and circumvent the security system that has worked so well for 10 years.
Sandy Berger, you said it earlier, and I want to emphasize it again now. Our main focus tonight is on those people dead, missing, wounded, and their families. But as former National Security Council advisor until very recently, and one of our ranking experts. I want to expand this conversation out. There's a lot of talk now of a we will retaliate, and Senator Orrin Hatch said tonight, well, our intelligence operatives have some indications that there are links to Osama bin Laden. There's talk about, well, the Taliban in Afghanistan better dig deeper, in effect, because if it turns out Osama bin Laden did it, the Taliban's been protecting him, hiding him within their country, then he better look out. But talk to us realistically about the whole subcontinent. Both Pakistan and India are nuclear powers now. Pakistan right on the border with Afghanistan. All of this by way of saying, if it's ever decided that Osama bin Laden was responsible for this and he's still in Afghanistan, there are no easy answers about how to get him, how to retaliate.
Well, I think that's an important point, Dan. Of course, let me repeat your caveat. We don't know. America proceeds on facts, not on speculation. So, number one, we have to determine what has happened here. But we're talking, if we are talking about bin Laden, about a very difficult target. This is far from nowhere, in very rough terrain. And I don't believe this is now, given the escalation that we've seen today of monumental proportions, susceptible of being dealt with in one pop, in one sort of exquisite act. This may require the administration to look at a range of options, from economic pressure to military options that go beyond simply missiles from afar.
Very quickly, Sandy Berger, because we don't have much time left in this particular segment. Can we or can we not absolutely count on the government, now a new government in Pakistan, to help with this new problem?
Well, the government of Pakistan has been cooperative in some respects on terrorism. They have turned over several operatives of bin Laden, but you also have to understand that the ties between the Pakistani intelligence and military and the Taliban and bin Laden's operations are quite intermingled. And the extent to which the Pakistanis will cooperate, I think if we needed that cooperation, remains to be seen.
Fair to say, open to questions. Sandy Berger, yes. Thank you very much again for being with us.